Become conscious of precisely how you are using the words I am in your daily conversations. If whatever follows these two words is not fully aligned with your perception of how the creative source of the universe would be speaking, then make the correction on the spot. Say to yourself, I am the resurrection and the life in thought and feeling. According to the I Am Discourses of Saint Germain, quote, it immediately turns all the energy of your being to the center in the brain, which is the source of your being. You cannot overestimate the power in this statement. There is no limit to what you can do with it. It was the statement that Jesus used most in his most difficult trials, unquote. Secondly, notice how those around you, particularly family and close friends, use and misuse the inherent power of I am in their lives. Observe that many people say, I am weak, I am poor, I am depressed, I am sick, sad, afraid, I am unlucky, and so on. And they continue to attract that into their life. If they are willing to listen and change, gently remind them that there's no way to attract what they prefer without acknowledging and applying the active presence of God in them. No arguments, just gentle reminders. By observing and teaching the I am awareness, you will become more aligned with your highest self. And 3, remind yourself often that you have to send the old, unworkable fabrications about your highest self out of your life forever. Be able to say, I am God with pride and assurance that you are not being blasphemous or inappropriate. Believing in that ego-driven idea of a guide as a malevolent super being who plays favorites and is filled with rage if you displease him is akin to believing in the Easter Bunny and praying to that rabbit to solve your problems. Keep uppermost in your thoughts the words of Jesus. God is love, and that you are proud to be that all-powerful God yourself. You are God, the I am that I am. Know it and stay in harmony with this divine I am presence. Perhaps now it doesn't sound so foreign to you to assert your divine nature. You might just want to start by being careful not to use the words I am when describing yourself in any way that isn't congruent with your newly awakened, God-realized self. The lines of the 40th verse of the Tao Te Ching, quote, being is born of non-being, unquote. This was Lao Tzu's observation 2,500 years ago. The visible world of being originates in non-being. Some 500 years later, Jesus would tell his followers, it is the Spirit who gives life. John 6:63. I could go on through all of the great spiritual traditions and offer you quote upon quote that states that it is in the invisible, formless realm that the originating spark of life begins. Today, the world of quantum physics confirms that the universe is made of formless, spiritual energy, and that particles, that is things, do not originate from particles themselves. Everything springs from something that is akin to your imagination. You can't touch or taste or see or hear or smell it. It has no boundaries. You can't prove it with mathematical formulas or scientific verification, yet we all know that it exists. These invisible thoughts that you have, these ideas that continue to percolate within you, these fanciful imaginings that are always with you, are beyond the scope of science to prove or disprove. It is up to you to channel and use this magnificent endowment to work in the creation of all that you choose to place in that imagination. Taking charge of your imagination. My favorite definition of success, which I've cited on numerous occasions, was offered by Henry David Thoreau in the middle 19th century at Walden Pond. Quote, if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. I've italicized 2 words in Thoreau's definition of success, dreams and imagined. What Thoreau is saying to us is so important to you today. Be willing to dream and imagine yourself becoming all that you wish to be. If you live from those imaginings, the universe will align with you in bringing all that you wish for, even more than you imagined when you were living at an ordinary level of consciousness, or what Thoreau called common hours. Keep in mind this basic axiom. If all that now exists was once imagined, then what you want to exist for you in the future must now be imagined. You'll see as you listen throughout these foundations for fulfilling your wishes that using your imagination involves more intensity on your part than just imagining an occasional wishful thought. You must first unlearn some of the ways that you've been misusing or squandering the capacity your imagination has for providing you with an unlimited ability to manifest all that you desire. Thoreau called it advancing confidently in the direction of your own dreams. Unfortunately, some of us have learned to do the opposite with our imagination, and instead regularly use it to develop mental habits of advancing in precisely the reverse direction of our highest dreams for ourselves. Recall that I am God doesn't refer to your body in any way. It refers to the birthless, deathless, changeless spirit that remains in all the changing forms your body takes every moment of your temporary life here on earth.
Being peace. Peace isn't something that you ultimately receive when you slow down the pace of your life. Peace is what you're capable of being and bringing to every encounter and event in the waking moments of your life. Most of us are waging a nonstop internal mental skirmish with everyone we encounter. Being peaceful is an inner attitude that you can enjoy when you've learned to silence your incessant inner dialogue. Being peaceful isn't dependent on what your surroundings look like. It seldom has anything to do with what the people around you think, say, or do. A noiseless environment isn't a requirement. St. Francis's famous prayer states it better than I can. Make me an instrument of thy peace. In other words, St. Francis wasn't asking God to provide him with peace. He was asking for guidance to be more like the peace he trusted was his source. Being peace is different from looking for peace. This principle isn't about merely choosing tranquil thoughts when you're feeling frayed and anxious. I suggest picturing a container deep within yourself out of which all of your thoughts flow. Inside of this container, at its very center, imagine a candle flame. You need to make a commitment that this flame in the center of the container, holding all of your thoughts, will never, ever even flicker, though the very worst may go before you. This is your container of peace, and only peaceful thoughts can fuel this burning candle. You don't need to change your thoughts as much as you need to learn to be an energy of peace lighting the way and attracting serene, harmonious thoughts and beings. In this way, you'll become a being of peace. Obviously, you take this inner receptacle with you wherever you go. When people attempt to put some kind of pressure on you, when you feel overwhelmed, or when situations arise that previously incited your distress or bellicosity, you can immediately turn to your inner candle flame of peace and see how to keep your light glowing. This is being the peace that you wish for yourself. This is offering a matching vibration to your desire to be a tranquil and amicable being rather than a person suffering from the disease of trying to make life go faster. You've already seen the results of that folly, and you notice the symptoms of stress in virtually everyone you meet. As a being of peace, you make a huge impact on those around you. It's almost impossible to be totally stressed out in the presence of someone who has opted to be peace. Peace is a higher and faster energy. When you're being peace, just your presence alone will often nullify the uneasiness and the tension in those around you. In fact, this state causes pheromones of measurable energy to emanate from you. They affect others who become more peaceful without even being aware of the transformation taking place. The secret of this principle for restoring balance to your life is be the peace and harmony you desire. You cannot get it from anything or anyone else. So you're not ready to take Nisargadatta's profound advice and just be? Then work at becoming that being with the inner light of a steady candle flame. Whenever you think something, you must go to this container, select a thought, and send it out into the world. Using this metaphor, the real issue isn't about simply selecting positive, loving thoughts and having your world shift back into balance. The real issue is what's in the container. That is, what's in the heart reservoir you have inside of you to give to others. This container within is connected to an endless supply of love. You need only turn your thoughts to that source to be filled with love. Love for yourself, love for the world, love for life, love for all others, and most significantly, love for your source of being. Then this is all that you'll have available to give away, and consequently, all that returns to you. It's been said that the difference between all of us living at ordinary levels of human consciousness and those we call saints is that they never forget God, even for a single moment. They're cheerful when life is difficult, patient when others are impatient, and loving when others respond with hatred. Why? Because of that container. Ordinary people have a container out of which they pluck loving thoughts in certain circumstances. The saint has an internal vessel that contains nothing else out of which and into which love flows freely. So rather than working on simply changing your thoughts in order to become more peaceful and loving, why not shoot for the moon and think like the saint that you are? Focus on that container within. When you continually say, Holy Spirit, guide me now, you'll see your container overflowing with so many loving thoughts that it's impossible for negativity in any form to alter the balance within. We seem to live in a totally out of balance world where our desires for feeling peaceful are challenged by the myriad non-peaceful energies that are considered newsworthy. But we do have a choice in this matter. And we can choose to realign ourselves energetically with our desire to live in this world peacefully, regardless of what's going on around us, and in spite of the non-peaceful energy we're so often subjected to. Sogyal Rinpoche observed that, quote, 2 people have been living in you all of your life. One is the ego, garrulous, demanding, hysterical, calculating. The other is the hidden spiritual being whose still voice of wisdom you have only rarely heard or attended to, unquote. I'm inviting you to restore some balance by looking for heaven everywhere and listening and attending to that hidden spiritual being that is within you at all times, begging you to pay it more heed.
Where there is injury, pardon. This is about healing, whether it's physical or emotional. Bringing a sense of pardon to the presence of injury. I've just produced a tape with Hay House called The Secrets of Your Own Healing Power, in an address I gave to a chiropractic convention a while back. And the secrets of your own healing power are basically to understand, well, here's a letter that was written by a woman. Her name is Gladys McGarry. And she wrote a book called The Physician Within You. Wonderful book. She's a medical doctor. And she relates a conversation with her son Carl, who had just finished his internship and was specializing in orthopedic surgery. He told his mother about his fears about having people's lives in his own hands, and she wrote him this letter. She said, Carl, as a surgeon, you may pull an incision together and suture it well, but you cannot make it heal. If you think you are the one who does the healing, you have a right to be scared. But if you understand that you are a channel through which healing moves, and that you are contacting the healing force within your patients, you have nothing to fear. You will have awakened the physician within them and sent them on their way to heal themselves. Healing, to me, is bringing the presence of a faster and a higher energy to the presence of this thing we call injury or disease, which is really the reaction of our bodies to our minds. And our minds have, again, the illusion that we're separate from God, and therefore our bodies are commanded by a ego mind rather than a sacred mind. And that when we move ourselves, and this is one of the biggest questions that you had in all the questions I read last night and this morning, it was about, what about these people who get diseases? What about children who have diseases? What about people who get AIDS, and all of these kinds of things, and how can you ask them to take responsibility, and so on. And it's not an issue that is an easy one to deal with because it's very emotionally entrenched. But just like starvation is part of the perfection of this universe that I don't like or agree with or understand, and so I put my attention on my desire to end it, and I know that that comes from God as well. I feel the same way about disease. I think that some children incarnate to be here for a certain amount of time. And just like my father may have shown up here to teach me compassion and forgiveness by being the kind of person he was, I think a child might show up
in a body that has AIDS or in an injury or whatever, again, if you understand and believe and know that there's a perfection to this universe and there's a force operating that holds it all together, and that we have an infinite amount of time to work this whole thing out, we begin to no longer tell ourselves that death and these kinds of things that are taking place that are so painful for us are not a part of the perfection of it all. They are. And when you begin to bring pardon to the presence of injury, what you also do is you bring a higher consciousness. And when you bring a higher consciousness, you begin to detach yourself from this body and realize that that's not who you are. I am not this thing that I occupy. And once you're detached from it, like a Helen Keller wrote some of the most powerful and beautiful and inspirational material with a body that hardly worked at all. And when a Lance Armstrong, who is diagnosed with testicular cancer, has 2 tumors the size of grapefruit in his stomach and in his lungs, and 14 the size of golf balls in his lung areas, and 2 the size of oranges in his brain, and is told to die. And his wife brings a bike and puts it at the foot of his bed, and somehow something magical, because he was told, not only will you not walk again, you won't live and breathe again. He not only went past it, transcended it by looking at that bike that his wife placed at the foot of his bed, but he went to the most grueling test of physical endurance there is on the planet and won the Tour de France. After that diagnosis and that experience, the Tour de France takes 22 days. It's 2,000 plus miles through the Pyrenees, highest mountain peaks, lowest mountain peaks, every single day riding. The most grueling test of physical endurance there is. And not only did he win it once, but the next year, just to emphasize that this wasn't some fluke, he did it again. Twice. He's only the second American ever to win the thing. And he did it 2 years in a row after that cancer. And he wrote his autobiography, and it's called It's Not About the Bike. I recommend you read it. He brought something to the presence of this, and a miracle took place. And the law that has ever allowed any miracle to take place in the history of humanity, it's still on the books. It hasn't been repealed. It's there. Where there is injury, let me bring pardon.